My philosophy on life is don't forget where you came from.
Right, absolutely. I have a philosophy too.
Yeah.
It's a short walk from the castle to the house.
Yeah. You have that on.
Unlike Boston's bike lanes, which seem to be everywhere, the powers behind those bike lanes are much harder to find, and to put it mildly, are inaccessible. Sure, Mayor Michelle Wu will grudgingly field a question from within a scrum of reporters, but those interactions yield little clarity and hardly ever any new information. The Street Smarts team has experienced this firsthand. But finally, someone did step up to defend Boston's new bike lanes. In the world of Boston transportation and planning, Jim Aloisi has been the guy for decades. He's served as a Secretary of Transportation for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and has been involved in transportation matters large and small for years. The East Boston native is something of a visionary who imagines for Boston, quote, an egalitarian public transportation system that we can all be proud of.
Now, I'm going to be a different guest because we may not agree on, some of these things, but I'll give you a perspective from someone. I don't ride a bike. I either walk in the city or take the T. I don't bike. I do, however, support the introduction of safe, protected bike lanes in the city. And so do you. We have this publicly funded asset that we all pay for as city taxpayers. It's the streetscape. And there's one not changeable aspect of the streetscape. It's finite, right? And so we have a situation where we are living in a time when more and more people want to walk or they want to bike. The question is, how do you fit all this fairly? How do you allocate it fairly in a finite space? There are some people, not you, but there are some people who have grown up with the impression, and they're stuck with that this finite streetscape is there for one purpose only, some form of vehicular mobility, either to park the car or to drive the car. So the idea of carving out that finite space into fairly allocated components, to some people is an offense to what they perceive as somehow that's what the streetscape is there for. We know, a place like Boston, the streetscape was there before the automobile, and it was actually shared. If you look at early photos of horse and buggy days, people in the streets, it was a kind of chaotic environment, but it was very shared. So, but now it's not shared so much.
Right now, I think that there's a three-way division of the streets, of the what I call the surface transportation. No, some of them are 100% right. Is one, is you got pedestrians. Okay, they're actually the biggest users of the surface transportation in the Commonwealth, particularly Boylston Street, the busiest streets. But the ones that have lots of cars on it, pedestrians are number one, and they occupy a fairly good amount of space. On some places, they get more than enough room. Other places, it's somewhat crowded. Not so much. The next one is subways. Okay, and the subways, the genesis of that was actually trolleys. Okay, in 1850 they invented the steam engine, and next thing you know, we had trolleys.
We began with the streetcar trolley era.
Pedestrians, you have your horse and buggy and cows and so forth. That's what they originally built for. Then comes along the subway, okay, the trolley. And then it became overcrowded. We had lots of horses, we had trolleys, we had lots of pedestrians, and we had to figure out another space. So they went down. Right. Pretty much. There's still remnants of it here. Yeah. So people found that an automobile was so much more efficient, and there wasn't any referendum that said no more horses, because horses were in play when I was a child. And bicycles were part of that, because bicycles were invented.
But they're not yet new.
Yeah, right? and they aren't new either. And so the bikes have always actually had an access to the streets. There's no law that says you can't ride a bike.
There's no law that says you can't ride a bike. However, we haven't designed the street to be safe for cyclists or friendly to cyclists. We haven't designed the street to be efficient for public transportation, bus either. So now cities, and Boston's not unique, right? This is happening across the country. So now you're faced with, I've got this finite space. And people like me say, I think that the bus should have its own dedicated priority lane. Because I think whether it's 5 people on a bus or 10 people on a bus, It's highly more efficient, more sustainable than one person in a car. Number one. Number two, I want people like you who bike to do it freely and safely. What I don't think we need, and this, let's cut to the chase here, I don't think we need a long, extended, prolonged, air quotes, master planning process, because I think.
See, that's where I disagree.
Right, but let me say why. Let me give you why.
I'll be quiet. I just want to make sure I put that.
I know we
placeholder on
disagree.
that.
When I hear calls for master planning, in my ear, it sounds like someone saying, let's figure out how to delay this for 10 to 15 years. Because that's how long that kind of process takes. It's not a process that turns around overnight.
Things that have big impacts, for instance, okay, take a long time to plan because there's a lot of stakeholders, okay? Things that are pretty simple, they don't.
Yeah.
Now, I think to have a good bike lane, because I'm an infrastructure expert, I spent
Yeah.
50 years building almost everything that's of importance that happened here in like the last 30 years. That's what I do for a living, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And big things are more complicated and they take complicated solution. You know, I always say that complicated problem takes complicated solutions. Complicated solutions don't come around. And then you layer the fact that you've got competing interests becomes even more difficult. To create a world-class bike lanes system in an already overused or congested surface transportation system, you're going to have to do some really good thinking and you have to spend some money to get it done right. Like, for instance, that they want to have a bike lane that goes on Dartmouth Street all the way from Columbus, Joe Tremont, Stewart, through Huntington, by Boylston, by Newbury, by Commonwealth Avenue, and get to here. Okay, when you go through Copley Square, you need to build some kind of a structure. Either you're going to have to go there's an opportunity for maybe a beautiful structure there, or maybe we go underground there, or maybe we basically build something that goes over the parking, okay, there. I don't know what the solution, I don't want to propose any, because that's a discussion. Okay, but that's what I think that Boston is entitled to. We should have an example of what excellence is about. You had some things to say about planning and like suggesting that planning is about stopping things, you know. And
No, it's about
pausing.
It might be, but it's about delaying things.
About delaying it, yeah. Well, I mean, I think that that's a very narrow view. Okay, is that if that's true of all planning?
No,
well then
it's not true of all planning.
Okay,
So, for example,
then what is if you have you build something and it's not built very well?
Well,
you know, shouldn't you tear it up but the thing is that you build something for today and then something into the future. Okay,
I agree with
things
that.
that are easy to do, you don't have to look too far into the future. You take care of it today. Now, most of the bike lanes here are like white painted lines. Okay, so you can remove them quickly. Okay, now you take like a good bike lane here. Commonwealth Avenue is a good bike lane. All right, except for it should have a hard barrier there. Okay, and we can probably do that for $1 million a mile, you know, to put up a divider that basically keep people safe there. I won't ride my bike there. I'm not going to be 3 feet from a car doing 60 miles an hour in some cases.
You're afraid of the plastic.
No, not the plastic. The plastic cones are worse because they make people feel safe. I'm smart enough to know that I'm not safe behind a plastic cone. But the thing is, there is nothing there to keep you.
What would you think of a
So,
bike lane that was at the same
wait,
level of the...
No.
Wait, let me ask you a
finish
question.
my thought. Okay, is that so? Commonwealth Avenue is a good bike lane, but you got to basically do something to make it better. Okay, but you need.
How would you make it better?
You need to have. Okay, this is where planning comes in. Is you need to have a throughway on Beacon Street.
Yeah.
On Commonwealth Avenue, on Boylston Street. Okay, on Tremont and on Columbus. You need to have 5 ways to get from Arlington Street to Kenmore Square. That isn't built for the current demand. Okay, that isn't basically made so that you can basically let the bicyclists have a good bike path. You don't have to make that decision on every single block. That's what I call stupid. Okay, there's no other word for it. Okay, it's stupid. It's clumsy. It's idiotic. It's basically smells. You said planning smells of somebody trying to delay something. I think that basically when someone runs 5 ways to get to someplace, and there's hardly any traffic, okay, on bikes in those lanes because you get 5 ways to get there. That's what I call stupid.
But we allow...
You call something delay, which would be an offense to a planner. I call overbuilding something by 500% is an offense to me.
But I could argue that the same is true. We're letting automobiles have that choice today.
They've always had that choice.
No, they haven't always had that choice. They've always had that choice since they became the default mechanism for people.
Since about 1910, Henry Ford came up with the assembly line.
Right.
So for the last 100 years, okay, automobiles have used that. Okay,
I agree. But Jay, why should that dictate what we do in the 21st century?
Why? Because there's 500,000 cars and there's 10,000 bicycles.
But that's-
No. Answer that.
That's
okay? You asked the question.
Let me
Okay, so
I'll answer that,
why
because-
shouldn't 500,000 people have an equal amount of space there?
Because that's the tyranny of the majority. And here's what we
The majority. Wait,
Here's what we
no.
Here's what we
You've got a super
Let me answer the
minority.
question. Let me answer the question. The city needs fewer cars, not more cars. The city actually, in my
Who do you
judgment,
decide about that? You
Well,
take away my car?
no,
I got a nice-
you're entitled to your car,
Well,
but,
you
but
want
you're
me-
not
well,
necessarily
you
entitled.
don't want me to ride it in the city? Why can't I ride my car in the city?
Who are you? Who was the you in that context?
Hey, Jay Cashman.
You could do whatever you want.
Well, thank you. Well, you just
But
told
you
me.
may not.
You just told me you
well,
want to
no,
get
no.
my,
But why are you?
my
Why do
car
you
off the
think?
street.
Why do you think you're entitled to
Because
a particular
we've been doing it for
priority?
100 years, and
That's not
everybody else is doing it.
And I would
The
say
other
that's a very
500,000
poor
the
answer.
other four-
Very
well,
poor answer.
No, why? Okay,
No
because
offense.
first of all, it's lawful. Okay, one. First of all, it's
So is
lawful.
biking.
Second of all, there's a good infrastructure system. I can
Right.
understand it. Third of all, okay, is that I've been licensed to go by the Commonwealth to go on there.
Right.
My car is registered. My car's insured.
Right.
Okay. There's enforcement to make sure I take care of the roads. There's really good stop signs and traffic lights to basically make sure that I understand where I am all the time.
Right.
72 years old, and I haven't hit a
You look terrific,
pedestrian.
by the way.
Well, thanks very much. Okay.
No, I mean that sincere.
I'd look really good if I didn't drink so much.
Would you?
It's clear that Jay Cashman and Jim Aloisi have two very different philosophies, with Jay wanting to accommodate current needs while also building for the future. At present, that means acknowledging that cars must be prioritized, which Jim called the tyranny of the majority, suggesting that the evolution from gas-burning cars to alternatives must be encouraged, nudged, or even mandated. Quickly, the two got back to nuts and bolts.
What would you think if I said to you, you know what? I think the solution for some of these is to take that bike lane and elevate it, make it flush with the sidewalk. We're just going to don't make it part of the street, make it part of the sidewalk, put it up. So I'm going to now think about Com Ave. What does that mean? It means I'm going to move the parking away from the sidewalk.
No, you don't.
I'm gonna-
No,
I'm gonna elevate
Well,
the-
first of all, you already have I've heard the elevated parking
Elevated bike lane, you mean?
bike lane, okay, and I think it's got merit in certain locations. It's a foundation built on sand, okay. It's not a great because it's not applicable every place.
It's
okay?
not. That's not a solution
Number one,
everywhere. Right.
At 50 miles an hour, okay. Because that's what the speed people go in Commonwealth Avenue, okay? 30 is the speed limit, but they go faster than that, particularly they're trying to make a light.
Right.
Okay, so an elevated 6-inch elevated.
No enforcement on that, is there?
No, I actually have
'Cause they
seen
wouldn't
people
be
pulled
speeding.
over,
Yeah.
okay, for speeding, but they still do it.
I would tell you this. What's killing people are oversized vehicles that are way too heavy, way too big, and are being driven recklessly by people who shouldn't be behind the wheel. Here's the reality of life, right? When I came into your studio today, I was your library. I was greeted.
Do this every day.
I was greeted by these guys, but I was greeted by two very lovely, charming dogs. And I contrast their good behavior to human behavior. Whether you're driving a car, walking, biking, 9 times out of 10 these days, people are distracted by the iPhone, by some other thing, by the music they're listening to. When you're driving, the road rage, the entitlement, the sense that I can go fast and you can't, the sense that I'm entitled to some free parking space on the street, even if I don't live in the city. Many of the cars that we're talking about, these are not even city residents, Jay. What we learned in the pandemic is restaurants want to spill out into the street. People want to walk more. People want to cycle more. We need to give people in the 21st century a fair allocation of safe space to do that. What that it means in practical terms is taking out parking lanes. It means taking out driving lanes. It means reducing automobility. Now, in Everett, a few years
These
ago,
are good ideas, but
these are controversial
wait.
ideas in a way.
I've basically done man on the street here. We get a lot of
Yeah,
man
I've
on
seen
the
you.
street.
I've seen them.
Okay, and there's I always say 10% of the people are nuts. 10% of the people in this country are crazy. I think pretty much all over the world.
I think you're lowballing it, but that's all right.
I might be lowballing it, right? And certain people say that I want to do away with all cars. I don't want any cars.
I'm not interested in the war on cars. No.
But the thing is, maybe that's the thing to do. And you know something? If the majority of people voted to change something that people seem to be happy for the most part, with the current situation,
Yeah.
okay, is that I think we should do it. We don't live in a totalitarian society where someone
Totally.
says, guess what, let's go do it. That's why, civil liberties are number one as an American. Okay, so you got to basically do some sort of planning.
I'm not against cars. I drive cars. I have a car. I'm not one who goes with the jargon war on cars, right? Let me give you a couple of things. First of all, lost opportunities, missed opportunities with the big dig. I wear this button all the time. This button says connect the red and blue. We should be connecting the red and the blue line between Bowdoin Station and Charles MGH. Easy cut and cover. Bowdoin Station at the last stop on the blue line and Charles MGH, right down Cambridge Street, right? Number two, missed opportunity. Should have been a dedicated third harbor tunnel or fourth harbor tunnel for buses and emergency vehicles so that the Silver Line bus doesn't get stuck in traffic in the Ted Williams Tunnel. Make it a real rapid transit tunnel. Have we lost that opportunity? Is the geometry there to put such a tunnel? Maybe it's still there, maybe not. It wouldn't be cheap to do. Those are the kinds of things that would, on the commuter rail, let me just make a point. We're running dirty, I say dirty, spewing black carbon, diesel locomotives in the 21st century on commuter rail. We could be running electric multiple units on the commuter rail.
We do not make electricity out of the air. Okay, we
No,
make
no, no.
electricity in this country.
There's
75%.
there's nothing that's pure.
No, everything is. It's all petroleum driven. And so when you say clean electricity, you got to know what you're talking about
No.
because you're polluting. Okay, you come over in the MBTA.
You interrupted me
Okay,
for a second.
let me finish out because
Fine.
no, but listen, I let you talk as much about clean electricity.
My point on the electricity was that the trains, the electrical multiple units that you could run on commuter rail are much more efficient for a couple of reasons. One, they accelerate and decelerate more quickly. The dwell times are smaller. You can get much better frequencies on electric than diesel. Two, from a cost of maintenance over life cycle, significantly, just like an EV, over an ICE vehicle, significant. I have to say ICE means internal combustion engine these days. Significantly cheaper. Significantly cheaper from the public
Let me concede
perspective.
that electric, will basically outperform direct drive
Total
diesel by
outperforms.
about 10%. Okay,
Mean-
because we basically converted all of our dredges, to a diesel electric, because electric.
Well, you know this.
Those things. But it's an incremental change. So just don't be telling people is that guess what? Because that's the misnomer. You know it.
I don't sell
so
it
you can
as
say
a-
that, guess what? We can make a 10% change, in the amount of carbon we use, if we did it this way.
Yeah, but
and I would agree with you.
that's-
but we
that's
still
not the
haven't solved
primary-
the problem. I have a totally different view of that.
Yeah.
And I see that you're passionate about what you're saying. Now we're going to basically run out of runway here. So I think more transit is a great idea.
Yeah.
And I'm not against that. And I'm not against the bike lanes, But I don't want to be responsible to basically have sat by and know what I know and not get the word out there and say, guess what? We got a mess here. Stop expanding. How many roads do we need, from Arlington Street up to Fenway Park for the next 10 years, How many of this do we need? How many do that?
Right.
Now, these are basic fundamental questions.
Jay, the issue with bike lanes, and again, no one would ever, and you would never say, on Dartmouth, go all the cross streets. No one would ever say, you know what, all the people can just walk on Dartmouth. We could take the sidewalks out and build more park. No one would ever say that. No one would ever say, take the parking out. Why are we parking cars there? They can park somewhere else. But it's easy for people to say, why are we building bike lanes? My answer is, and I'm not a person who cycles, my answer is because it's a finite, publicly paid for space, and it should be fairly allocated.
Of course, but the
among
thing is
every
that
user.
people, politicians, a singular politician, administration, particularly like the mayor, that's got really no checks and balances. You get a city council. That
Oh,
can't
I
do
think the
anything.
voters are checks and balances, and they just said they want her back in office.
This is a uniquely unpopular thing from Michelle Wu. When I basically add up all the people that I've talked to, and I've talked to You've seen the man on the street and stuff. I've talked to like a lot of different people,
Yeah.
and they're kind of saying, "Yeah, what the hell? Why are they doing this? I feel unsafe. I feel unsafe." This person's like, "I don't know where they're coming."
No.
Other people say, kind of like you, I never saw a bus or a mass transit form of transportation I didn't like. Okay, like they're really happy about that.
People-
and that's great. And I think that's what makes us a great country is you get like different points of view.
Human nature is people don't like change. So when you're introducing change, it always is going to ruffle feathers. I think that people,
Of course.
they always say, if you ask
but
people,
yeah.
they say, we want change. Well, they want change unless they see it, and then they don't like it.
I couldn't agree with you more. Nobody likes change. Okay,
But-
everybody worries how it affects them. No one. People are concerned about things that they don't know the outcome of. It really is. It's not change. It's they're worried about the outcome. How am I going to survive in this new
Right.
outcome?
Jay Cashman and Jim Aloisi have different opinions on how much of the planning process should include input from the public. What is input worth, and what is the value of input from credentialed experts versus concerned stakeholders? Aloisi, for his part, singled out a couple of Street Smarts guests for criticism.
I've watched your podcast, and I know that Meg has been didn't like any of this stuff.
Yeah, but
I don't-
Meg is just one person.
No, but she's more than one person. She represents a constituency here. She represents a group of stakeholders with no reference at all to data, which I deal with every day.
No. I got to stop
wanna-
right
I want-
there.
no.
Meg knows how many seconds it takes for the walk and no walk thing.
I'm not talking about that.
All that.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who have the impression or like to peddle the idea that when you put in a bike lane or a bus lane, that somehow you're affecting foot traffic in business. No data exists that says anything other than when I put in a safe bike lane or a bus lane, the only thing that happens is business goes up. Why is that? Because people
Says
feel
who?
every time this
Show me
has- I'll
send
send
me
you the data.
Send me the data.
I'll send you the data.
Okay,
It's
I'm
well
not
documented.
going to let you basically.
Well documented.
Realize when I basically went to those meetings and I saw that how all those people felt frustrated and
Yeah, but Jay, you know what?
And these were the leaders of 33 of the 35 communities, and they all get up and told a horror story, the exact same horror story.
I was Secretary of Transportation. People who show up at meetings invariably are people who have negative opinions. You don't find a lot of supporters showing up at public meetings. People don't like change. People who come to public meetings are generally negative, not positive. They've got a gripe of some type or another. They're afraid of change. You have to take that into account. Now, I'm not saying that you dismiss it.
But the thing is, wait, we started talking.
That's
here
not how to
about-
make public policy.
Don't you think that this is a major infrastructure change? They have bike lanes in every street or half of the streets or all the thoroughfares.
Of course, but
Okay,
it's a
so why would
necessary
you-
one. But
why
it's a
would you-
necessary change.
I'm not saying it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
I'm saying, but don't you think that this thing should be basically designed and rolled out in a manner that would basically, because there's only 10,000 bikes, there's a 500,000 cars. Okay, in a manner, shouldn't there be a master plan to this whole thing?
No, that's where I disagree.
Well,
I think.
then listen.
I think the master plan idea is.
Tell me why a master plan, okay, doesn't. When you remember what happens. Remember what happens in master plan. It's not about stopping. It's like, first of all, what sort of signs are we going to have? That's a master plan. Are we going to have enforcement? Are we going to have registrations? Okay, it's part of the planning process. You get out front in this thing. You're going to basically put a motorized vehicle out there that can basically go 30, 40 miles an hour.
Right.
That thing should be registered. And if Michelle Wu
And should it-
and
should it
got a
be in
hold
the
of
street with the
any one
cars?
of her reps and said, file a bill and registrations in the city of Boston, you have to be a registered vehicle. That would be done.
When people elect a mayor, they, I think, trust the mayor to get some things done.
I basically elect them because it might be the worst of two evils.
I'm not dismissive of public engagement. I'm not certainly not looking for autocracy. But what I am saying is,
you
let me
want to plow your
Let me finish.
project.
finish.
You think that should have been done.
finish. I do think
without the.
I want to listen to
involvement.
people, but I want to hear them, but I don't want to defer to them. That's the difference. You don't defer to people because then you're in a position where you're stuck in this sort of status quo bias.
Then there's nothing. So what you're free to do is do whatever the hell you want.
You hold a public meeting about changing a bus lane or adding a bus lane. Bus riders are not showing up. I don't know why they don't show up. They do not show up. So the only people who are in that meeting are local residents who don't take the bus usually and are antagonistic toward it.
Let me ask you this.
Why would I defer to them? I would listen to them.
Okay.
I would learn from them.
You're not infallible, okay? So if
No one's infallible.
Well, thank you. It's like that's very white of you.
Jay, you can't let community engagement be the tail wagging the dog.
I understand your point, okay? It's the wrong point, okay? Because what it sacrifices, okay, is our civil liberties. Our civil liberties are so important to us, okay? That's one thing when you get into that area, Americans hold together. That's the difference between me and you. I would rather wait for 30 years for that project to be done, or 20 years, than basically have somebody tell me, do this and do that, okay? I don't want that.
No.
There's a price to be paid for everything. There's a price to be paid for freedom, the price to be paid for our civil liberties, and if you don't want to basically put up with it, then you move to a different country.
The entire raw conversation with Jay Cashman and Jim Aloisi is available on the Street Smarts channel on YouTube. On the next Street Smarts, a shakeup in the Wu administration means that Jay Cashman sees an opportunity to make a giant impact in the city of Boston.